Spaghetti.
Why haven't you checked the children?
Ambulance! It all began with a scream over 911.
Good evening, Slasher fans. You're here with a brand new episode of Slasher Studios Horror Podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Andrew. Andrew, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing quite well. You know, getting ready for Horror Hound this weekend. You know, double checking my suitcase and stuff because I think I have a slight tinge of OCD because it's always a constant like. Do I have it? Do I have everything? I think I have everything. Oh, I hope I have everything. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing good. I'm right there with you. Sadly, I'm not going to be going to Horror Hound. Actually, like a friend of mine just tagged me in like this picture today. I'm like, don't even remind me. I don't even want to know. Like, but
I know.
I don't feel fun. It's a very interesting lineup.
Well, I mean, it's kind of funny because the lineup that originally was there, half of them seem to have canceled, and it's been replaced by completely different ones. So I'm very curious to see how it turns out. But yeah, I mean, you know, you still have time to book up Horror Hound or Texas Frightmare because I still have a room with 2 beds.
I'm going through HorrorCon's withdrawal, so I think that I'm going to have to talk to one of our friends and see if I can possibly talk her into going.
That'd be a smart move.
Yeah, because so you just went to see the new Cloverfield tonight. What did you think about that?
Well, all I really knew about the movie was it was sort of tied to Cloverfield, but not directly or something, and it was an underground bunker. I have, on purpose, like, kept myself in the dark about a lot of it, and I'm actually really happy I did because I thought it was very well done. I mean, the acting was just superb. I just, like, John Goodman and, of course, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who's solid in everything, even crappy movies. So I was very happy with it. It seemed like everyone in my audience seemed to like it. We had a fair amount of people, so I need a few days to wrap my head around it because I'm still thinking about stuff about it, but I can say that I did like it. Oh, sorry, the cat wants to get out of my room.
Did you see the thing with her on Twitter about like the guy who like didn't like her performance in it?
Who what? I'm sorry.
Oh, for Mary Elizabeth Winstead, like that guy on Twitter that like tweeted to her about like how he didn't like her performance.
I thought she did a great job.
Well, it's great because like he just gave like this list of like stuff that he didn't like about her in the movie, and she actually responded to him, and she's like, "What? Did you think I was fat too?"
Well, I mean, sometimes it's ridiculous because it's just you get to a point where everyone thinks they're a critic, and I know the irony of that is that we host a podcast reviewing movies, but it's one thing to say, oh, you know, I wasn't a big fan of this or this or this, but to go and like on Twitter and verbally attack an actor or actress, I mean, that's just silly.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, if you didn't like the movie, you know, you're entitled to your own opinion. If you didn't think he was good in it, you're entitled to that opinion. Like, then just put it. Like, I mean, obviously, you're just trying to be a troll if you're actually going to take the person in there. I mean, like, it's just, you know, there should be some kind of, like, etiquette. Like, I wish that there was some kind of a test that you could pass for internet etiquette before you were able to get, like, a social media account because I feel like so many people.
I've been saying that for years. I have been saying that for years. I mean, you have to have a license to drive a car. I just think natural progression of things is you should have a license to go on the internet, because some of these people are just, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, it's,
you know,
I don't get it either.
Sometimes I wonder, what was that movie with Sylvester Stallone? And I think it was, maybe it wasn't. Or maybe it was, yeah, Demolition Man, where everybody's, like, sterilized at birth and they have to, like, apply to have a child. Yeah. You know, looking back, that's probably not that bad of an idea. Because, like, so I work in a bar. We had somebody who unplugged our ATM. We're a cash-only bar. They unplugged our ATM to charge their phone, even though there was an open, unused outlet 6 feet away from them. But they unplugged our ATM, our functional ATM. So, kind of a, yeah. That was sort of the sound I made, but much louder and more like, what?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't get people. I mean, it's almost like, you know, idiocracy is coming true, which, I mean, in that movie, like the very beginning, it's very kind of prophetic for what is happening in America today, where, you know, we don't have any kind of, you know, it's all about natural selection, but natural selection is less about, like, the smart parts of the breed reproducing, and it's more of, like, the, you know, for lack of a better word, just stupid people. Like, and so, I mean, you have dumb kids, dumb people having lots of dumb kids, and those dumb kids having lots of dumb kids. Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah, well, and then, like, I mean, the fact that we have to have, like, warning labels on, like, wood chippers saying, do not stick your hand in there. Maybe we should get rid of the warning labels and just let nature sort itself out. I mean, if you're dumb enough to stick your hand into a wood chipper that's going, maybe it could be better off.
No,
I mean,
I completely agree with you.
I don't know. I'm probably, yeah, I don't know. Movie it's just because I have many a oh God.
So moving on back to Cloverfield. For those of you guys who don't know, it originally started out as a completely different movie and nothing to do with Cloverfield. It was kind of bought by J.J. Abrams and his production company, and they did some reshoots, and they kind of tied it into the Cloverfield mythology, which that's all I'm going to get into because that's all that I know, and I think that's all that you really need to know going into the movie. But what's your take on them doing this? I mean, it sounds like you pretty much like this movie. Most people did. Is this kind of an experiment that you'd want to see happen in the future, or do you think this is kind of a one and done, like, probably not a good idea for other franchises?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, they've been doing this forever with franchises. I mean, the only thing is, this was a completed film. I mean, Saw 2 was a spec script that was written completely different, that they retooled to make a Saw movie, and then hell, more than half of the Hellraiser franchise is just scripts they grabbed and then shoehorned Pinhead in. I think I don't think that's a bad plan for franchises and stuff like that if it's done well. And I feel this one was done well, and like Saw 2 was done well, whereas some of the Hellraisers not done well.
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess my only fear with something like this that I could see happening is, like, a studio buying, like, a found footage supernatural movie, and, you know, it might be a really good standalone story, and they'll just add in all this crap to make it a paranormal activity. Like, and I'm not saying necessarily that that'll happen, But, I mean, I don't know. It's got kind of its pros and its cons because probably this movie without the Cloverfield title would have gone direct to video. Nobody probably would have seen it. Like, maybe it would have opened in like a dozen theaters. It definitely wouldn't have gotten the exposure that it is now. So I'm happy that it worked for this movie. I'd be curious to see if this is going to kind of start a trend in Hollywood.
Yeah. I hope so. I mean, I don't know about hope so, but I don't know if it's done with the kind of respect to the original film and the franchise. I don't see it being a bad thing because there's billions of, maybe not billions, but there's tons of unused scripts floating all over Hollywood, and I'm sure a lot of them could easily be tweaked into something instead of just sitting there gathering dust. So I don't know. I'm very, very, very curious to see what it. Because I mean, I don't think the budget was very big on this one, and it did pretty well. So maybe maybe they'll open their eyes. But then again, fuck if I know. Hollywood can be some of the dumbest people in the world. Those suits.
Yeah, it's like the whole Deadpool thing, where it's like, oh, this movie made $300 million. Like, that means that we need to make more rated R superhero movies. Like, no, the lesson of this was that it did really well because it was not like other movies.
Well, and it did really well because it respected the property. I mean, it didn't talk down, because if they tried to make a PG-13 Deadpool, it just wouldn't have worked because the comic itself is very vulgar and sexual and stuff like that. So, I mean, just, I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where, you know, it's a fine line, you know, where, you know, you got to be respectful, but at the same time, like, it's a business. Like, so you have to kind of make something that's going to appeal to multiple people, and it's kind of, I'm happy that kind of these movies that are kind of thinking outside the box are doing well at the box office. I mean, even like a movie like The Witch made over $20 million on a budget of just $1 million. So, I mean, I'm happy that people are kind of, you know, taking a chance on films out there. It'll be curious to see kind of where it goes.
I just hope that what they take from this is taking a chance on original, interesting films and not just saying, well, these movies made money, let's do cheap knockoffs until it dies, which I know I'm probably being way too optimistic about that, but I'm hoping they take a chance more on original, interesting films than, you know, just copycats.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of right there with you. I think that, you know, it'd be nice to kind of say that, like, that's what's going to happen. I think that it's probably more realistic that studios are going to be going to writers and say, hey, make me a superhero movie that's like Deadpool.
Yeah. Well, and then there's all the, oh, God, what was I going to say? The big hubbub that Batman versus Superman was going to be R-rated, and I'm like, I don't know if that's the right franchise to go R-rated. If they wanted to do like an R-rated DC movie, they should have went with Suicide Squad. I mean, that is a movie about villains being villains. Like, that would have been perfect to be an R-rated comic book movie. But
what I don't understand about the whole Batman versus Superman thing is that they've already announced that the version that's going to be on DVD and Blu-ray will be the rated R version. So, I mean, what the studio's kind of doing is telling, like, people that are kind of on the fence that I don't need to see this in theaters because I'm not going to see the complete version. Like, I'll just wait for video. So I think that seems very foolish to me.
Well, and it's the same thing with Rob Zombie's 31. I mean, he quote unquote had to cut down his original vision for an R rating, but the Blu-ray version will be the NC-17 original quote vision. But then I'm just sitting there and I'm like, well, who's those fans that are going to pay to see this in the theater? They're going to want to see your original vision. God, I can't stop saying quote unquote. I'm sorry. It's just when it comes to Rob Zombie, I like to use a lot of sarcastic air quotes, and it's much better when you can see me. But they're gonna want to see the original vision of his story, not a watered down, edited. When they know in 4 months they're gonna get the unrated cut. So I think it's just stupid. And plus, in this day and age, just release the fucking movie unrated. You can do that now. It's not this big like. Like scandal.
Yeah, or I mean, like if it has to do with like theaters not being able to show an unrated film, blah blah blah, whatever. Like at least like you owe it to your fans to say like, hey, like the movie in theaters is going to be rated R, but we want you to see the unrated one because that's what you really paid for. So like here, like you can download it the same day that it's going to be in theaters. Like at least offer something like that.
Exactly. But, there's nothing you can do. I love that now they're doing the limited release VOD demand because I much prefer that because a lot of times, I mean, I kind of wish I would have seen The Witch in my living room with just like Dylan instead of a packed theater full of people like and like tapping their feet and just, I don't know. Thankfully everybody was quiet during this one.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely movies that, kind of get like that VOD release that, like The Witch, like I would have been fine with seeing that on video. But then there are other movies that I would have loved to have seen with like an audience that was really into it. Movies like, Housebound or stuff like that where, they're very audience-pleasing movies. The Witch, whether you like it or not, really doesn't have anything to do with it. It's not an audience movie. Like, you're not going to enjoy it more seeing it with 100 people as opposed to, like, one other person. Like, it's just not that kind of movie. That's not, a fault against it. It's just that's not what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
So moving into our show this week, we're going to be talking about horror movie goofs, horror movie mistakes, stuff that fans noticed that filmmakers didn't, whether they're like editing goofs or continuity, just kind of a little bit of everything. I got a pretty big list. I did some research online. Some of these, I'm going to have to watch the movie again because I definitely had noticed a couple of these, and I'm very, very, very curious. So I guess, like, once we can jump in right away, but is there kind of one kind of horror movie mistake or goof that like is like your ultimate favorite?
Well, I know in the original like media VHS of Friday the 13th, or not Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, I used to love that when he fell over the railing, he landed on a mattress because it just kind of completely takes you out of. But yeah, I mean, there's none that I can say is like my favorite, but I don't know. What about you?
Yeah. What's really kind of ironic with that is that we've come so far from like VHS to like now, Blu-ray, and now because the Blu-ray is very clear again, you can see the mattress again. So it's kind of like we've gone further, but we've gone kind of so far ahead in kind of the movie technology that we're kind of noticing these mistakes that you're like, oh, hey, like I never knew it was there. So yeah, that's funny because that one's actually on my list too. There's actually a lot from the original Nightmare on Elm Street. There's the kind of disappearing vodka bottle that's in the kitchen scene with Nancy and Marge. There's also the scene where Rod dies, where he gets hung with the sheet and you can see the wire in it. Lots of stuff like that. I mean, it's stuff like that that like it doesn't really necessarily like make the movie bad, but it's just like, oh yeah, like I never noticed that before. And definitely
well,
some of these are
sometimes, I mean, it seems like they were meant for, like, they worked on film and VHS, but then we get to Blu-ray where everything's cleaned up so much that it's just kind of like Evil Dead. When I watched The Evil Dead on VHS and stuff, it was so good and so scary, and I still love it. But when it's all like crystal clear HD cleaned up, you see the fishing lines and the breaks in the makeup and stuff like that, stuff that you wouldn't have seen on like the murky transfers. So sometimes the murky transfers work a little bit better.
No, I definitely kind of agree with you there, and I think that there's kind of also a lesson to be learned here is that, I mean, you know, Evil Dead was, 81, Nightmare on Elm Street was 84. Some of the other movies on our list were very much of that time too, and until like the mid to late 80s, VHS wasn't really very commonplace. I mean, a VCR in like 1984 could easily cost $1,000, so a lot of people didn't have them. So with a lot of these movies, like, you weren't meant to see it a bunch of times. It's like, oh, well, I'm sure some of these filmmakers, possibly even Wes Craven for Nightmare on Elm Street was like, well, yeah, you can kind of see the fishing line, but people are only going to watch this once. Like, no one's actually going to notice. Like, no one's going to pay attention to it. And I think that kind of with kind of our savviness when it comes to technology and movie making, for better or worse, I think today when we watch movies time and time again, we're kind of, on the lookout for those kind of mistakes. And that kind of sucks sometimes because it really does take you out of the movie. I would say that if it's a tiny mistake and it's something that you're noticing for the first time that you're watching a movie, the movie's probably not working for you.
No, unless it's something like blatantly obvious, like, Nightmare on Elm Street 4, Alice's awful wig that when she's doing the nunchucks and climbing out the window and stuff. I mean, it's a guy in a really bad, like, brown, like, short, like, it's like 6 inches shorter than her actual hair. So, I mean, when it's stuff like that, it's really noticeable. But when it's like tiny minuscule stuff, it's just kind of like if you watch a movie enough, you start noticing these things. And I believe you are as well, one of those people that has no problem watching a movie that we really liked over and over and over. I mean, hell, I've watched a bunch of movies that I kind of just sort of liked or I hated, but I was like, well, maybe I'll watch it again to see if I enjoyed it, like, now. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, too. I mean, if you're mentioning Nightmare on Elm Street 4, another one in that is that, there's a scene outside the school where Kristen's smoking a cigarette that she never lit. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, nobody noticed that? Like...
Well, I mean, with those movies, they were always on such a time crunch that it doesn't surprise me that they either didn't notice or just, didn't care. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, they could just, like, throw it off with you guys. Oh, like, she thought that she'd let it because she just hasn't been sleeping in days. Like, blah, blah, blah. Like,
yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and then you have just simple stuff like, Friday the 13th, The New Blood, where they just use stock footage of the tent from the final chapter for the scene with the girl in the sleeping bag. The only difference is the tents don't match up at all. I mean, the one in the final chapter is a dome-shaped tent, whereas the one in The New Blood is like a house-ish tent.
Yeah, I mean, it's really funny when they kind of do stuff like that, and I mean, especially with the Friday the 13th movies, like, it was like, oh shit, like we didn't get the shot that we needed. Like, do we have it in one of the other movies that we can fake it off? Because, like, I mean, especially that one. We talked about that one before, but like they were shooting in like February, March, and it was in theaters in May. Like, oh God, I can't even imagine.
I know. Well, it still just boggles my mind that they filmed those movies in like January, February, and it's supposed to be summer, so you've got skinny dipping girls and stuff like that going into hypothermia.
Oh yeah, I mean, just yes, shit that they would never let a studio get away with that today. Like there'd be like that set would be shut down. Like it'd be all over like Deadline Hollywood. Like I mean, you can't keep really anything like that secret today. There was just like that reports about Amy Adams and kind of her miserable treatment on the set of American Hustle, where it's just like, yeah, directors can't really be an asshole anymore because the word's going to get out.
Mhm. And it seems like, I mean, probably back in like the 80s when they were making these movies, like just like factory, they probably like the girl in, oh God, I don't remember which one it was in Friday the 13th Part 5, but it was like 2 a.m. and all of a sudden they were just like, oh, we decided that your character is now going to be naked. I know you seem hesitant, but it's 2 a.m. You shouldn't call your agent, wake him up, because this is a Paramount film. This is a very big deal. Just do it. And it's just kind of like that would never work now. Like, thankfully they got because I know they tried to do the same thing with Darcy DeMoss in Part 6, where the suits of Paramount were like, there's no nudity, make off her top, and she just goes, no, my contract's signed. It says nothing about nudity. So thankfully she had something like going on, like she knew enough of the business, but
yeah, and it's just kind of sad that kind of actresses are kind of being put in those kind of positions where it's like, what do you say? I'm glad that she stuck her guns, but there's, at the same time, like, an actress that kind of caves, like, I wouldn't blame them either because I don't know what I would do in that situation.
Exactly. I mean, when it's like one of your first roles and it's a big movie, I would do the same thing. Like I would get really nervous as well.
So I guess we can move on to some other kind of goofs from movies. This one I'm really embarrassed about that I've never noticed this. And this movie I've seen, oh God, probably at least 100 times, now more than that. And this is Scream. And this is at the very end with Sydney's dad when he falls out of the closet. Like, I never noticed the hand throwing stuff out as he falls out. Like, I've never noticed that before. And I've seen that movie like a billion times.
I never noticed that either. I did notice the crew member underneath the balcony when Sarah Michelle Gellar's chucked off of it, which was re-editing.
But yeah, when he falls out of the closet, like when like the stuff falls after him, like if you look in the back, you can see a crew member's hands throwing the stuff out.
Oh. I love it.
But yeah, I mean, we've both seen the movie so many times, and it's like little things like that I'm like, I need to watch that again because, like, I mean, I don't doubt that really happened, but I've never noticed that.
No. Well, and the thing of it is there's a lot of like I Spit on Your Grave and like Scream 2 and Child's Play 2 where you see crew members in the background. In fact, I mean, even one of the blooper scenes of Dismembering Christmas, you see me sitting in the background because I thought I was off screen, and I was like, am I cool here? And they were like, yeah, sure. And then all of a sudden they filmed, they're like, nope, you're right in the middle of the shot. And of course my first like reaction is to just don't move really quick, because if I don't move they won't see me.
Yeah, I mean, it's really funny kind of with stuff like that. I mean, because you just never really know what you're going to see or, like, what's going to happen or really kind of what's ever going to go on. Oh, it looks like we have a caller. So let's invite this caller in. Let's see if they've got some good goofs for us.
No.
Caller, you're...
I'm just listening to the show, that's all.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for listening.
All right.
Okay.
Well, I've done that before. But yeah, I mean,
I'll go ahead.
It's such like a giant like collaborative medium that it doesn't really shock me that some of this stuff slips through, but even like when they're doing like test screenings and like rough cut screenings, there's certain things like Alice's wig and stuff where you're just kind of like, how do they not notice this? But it goes through so many hands and stuff like that. I mean, sometimes it's just like little things. Like in the movie The Thing, the boarded up window goes from horizontal in one scene to vertical in a much later scene. They probably didn't even think of that when they were decorating the inside set versus the exterior set. And I mean, it's something tiny. I never would have noticed it had I not looked up horror movie goofs. But yeah, that was one of them. And I was just kind of like, I never would have realized that.
Yeah, or like another one that I found was the original Halloween, where the nurse was outside in the car and he smashes through the window. I've never noticed before that in his hand, you can, if you look carefully, you can see that he's got a wrench in order to break the window with his hand. And that's, again, one of those movies I've seen 100 times. Never noticed that before.
Oh, I always noticed the wrench. I thought that he had it in his hand anyways to break the window. I mean, maybe. Yeah, well, I mean, like the VHS I had, it was like a Blockbuster VHS. You could see it, and that was the first time I ever watched the movie. So I've always just assumed that was part of the film.
Yeah, and I mean, that's actually one of those goofs, like, it could be played either way. You could say, like, okay, well, he needed that to break the window, or, I mean, you could see, like, okay, well, you know, he was using it for practical purposes, or it was a movie mistake. Like, it kind of works either way.
Yeah, and see, I was the dumb one of the podcast where I was researching, like, character mistakes for this podcast. And so when you were like goofs, I was like, oh no. So I was just, but I mean, it's just, one of my favorites. Okay, Friday the 13th, Jason Takes Manhattan. His coveralls have completely like restitched themselves back together, and the chain is gone from his neck from part 7. Like, same thing with part 2 and 3. He goes from like a 5'10" backwoods hillbilly with a beard and red hair to a 6'4" bald hulking monster. I mean, that kind of, especially 2 and 3, because those were the same director, and how he never thought at any moment to be like, you know, maybe, and same with like her flashback to her memory of being attacked by Jason. It's just stuff where it's like, he wouldn't have had those clothes because he got them in the beginning of the movie. He would have had the outfit from overalls and the flannel. But again, what do I know? Hindsight's 20/20.
For those of you guys who've seen Chris-like memories, I mean, pretty much everyone comes right out and say, especially with part 3, like, it was just about the 3D effects. Like they didn't care pretty much about anything else.
No, I mean, and that's one of my favorite things is, I mean, and I've been guilty of it, where we making fun of the actress that plays Chili when she realizes Shelly's dead and she's like wheezing and running upstairs. I'm like, God, that's so bad. And then you find out, yeah, she was like severe food poisoning or something like that, and she was just like really sick and all this other stuff, and they just were like, you got to keep doing it. So it was like, looking at that now, I'm just kind of like, oh, that poor girl.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like when you hear like those like backstories, it's kind of what happened with people. You're like, okay, well, this all makes sense now, and it's kind of like, oh, like that's just, it's too bad.
Yeah, I mean, and that seems to happen a lot. I mean, there was Kelly Jo Minter in Nightmare on Elm Street 5. She had to do that entire diving board scene with a severe case of food poisoning. I think she even told me like the director called in sick, but she couldn't, so she still had to do it. Like, she was like, I was not feeling it, and I'm in this swimsuit, and I just wanted to die. And I was just like, you're my favorite. I'm so happy I met you.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, yeah, like, you know, when you're kind of an actor and actress, like, you know, like with the director, like, yeah, we can have somebody else, like, sub for the day. You know, you probably have an assistant director, like, but it's not like, oh, hey, like, I guess we got to find somebody that looks like you for the day. Like, it doesn't really work that way. And unfortunately, when it comes to kind of big scenes, like, that just happens to be when all the really bad shit happens.
Uh-huh. But yeah, I mean, and movie mistakes, they happen. And most of the time, I find them very endearing because there's no movie that's perfect. Absolutely not. If anyone says it's the perfect movie, somebody else will find something else that's wrong with it. There's no such thing as the perfect movie because film is objective. I just, you know, and if it's a extraordinarily bad film, the Goofs just kind of make it that much better, at least for me, because if I check out of a movie being like, this is terrible, that's when I start really enjoying it, where I'm like, oh, I'm just going to start seeing what I can find that's ridiculous, and let's do this.
Yeah, I mean, there's some kind of amusing stuff out there with that. Like, as I was like looking for mistakes, like another one that I didn't notice that was also from the Scream series was in Scream 3 when Gail finds the killer's voice changer. I guess, and like I said, I've never noticed this before, but when she goes to pick it up, like her hands are bloody, but then when she like talks into it, her hands aren't bloody anymore. And then when she puts it back down, her hands are bloody again.
Well, I've always noticed the worst one I've ever noticed in Scream, which I noticed right away, so it wasn't that. But the biggest problem for me was the garage door. I mean, like the stunt woman is only like up to her shoulders, and Rose McGowan's like to her waist, and then she gets her head smashed. But then when Nev Campbell finds the body, it looks like her neck is broken, not her head smashed. It's just that kind of stuff makes me wonder. But then again, I mean, it was a short shoot. It was a low budget movie. I mean, they were just kind of rushing. And when it came to like the probably second unit shot of a zoom in on the dummy hanging from the garage door, they probably weren't like, okay, we need to watch the dailies from her death scene to make sure we have the head, because they were like, just slap it up there.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's kind of important to look at too, is like when you're making a movie, like you never know how it's going to edit together. Like you might assume that like, oh yeah, like, you know, we got every shot that we need, like everything's going to go smoothly, like, and then you're like, oh shit, like I need this shot in here and it doesn't really match like the rest of this. Do I put it in there or do I go without it and, you know, have the scene, you know, possibly not make any sense? It's kind of that fine line.
Yeah. But I mean, it goes, there's so many people that work on a movie and it goes through so many hands in between the producers, the directors, the editors, and it's just, things just slip through where it's like one person notices something where they're like Dismembering Christmas, the visible blood tube. One person's like, oh, I noticed that. And the other one's like, oh, I should get that. And then people just forget about it. I kind of love that it's in there because it's a total throwback. But some people are like, dude, what is that? So you can't please everyone.
No, you really can't. And I mean, I'm just going to kind of, we only have a couple minutes left, so I'll just kind of, run through a few more other ones that are on my list. The most irritating one, of course, is the Voorhees sign in Jason Goes to Hell. The spell Voorhees wrong. That's just lazy. Like, that's not a film. I mean, that is a filmmaking mistake, but that's one that could have easily been fixed ahead of time if even one person noticed. So that one's kind of unforgivable. Other ones that I've on my
most
list.
of Jason Goes to Hell is unforgivable just due to the fact that they retconned the entire very shaky continuity and just went their own way. I mean, when you're at sequel number 9 and you start introducing a long-lost sister curse and that he's a demon, like, just the misspelling of the sign was the least of, my concerns with those.
Yeah, I mean, you would have thought that, New Line Cinema made it. 2 years before that, they made Freddy's Dead, which did a very similar thing, where it's like, we're going to add all this backstory that makes no sense into what we have established. It didn't work there. It definitely doesn't work for Jason Goes to Hell. And it's just a mess. The other ones that I have on my list, in The Grudge, when she's looking up information on this, suicide is spelled wrong. I thought that was interesting. In Dolls, when the girls are being attacked in the hallway and all the dolls are attacking her, if you look, I believe in the lower left hand, possibly it's lower right hand. I know it's one of the two, but you can see the hand inside the doll, which I think that's kind of amusing. And then the last one that I have is at the very end of Jaws 4, Michael Caine gets out of the ocean after his jaws are back, and he's completely dry.
Well, and then one to throw out there too, when John Hurt's attacked by the face hugger in Alien, he's wearing a face hood, so just his face is visible, and the rest of it's covered by this white hood inside his astronaut helmet. But when he's on the medical lab, there's no remnants of any said hood. And if the face hugger was wrapped around his face like that, don't you think it would have been wrapped around?
That's a good point. I've never actually thought about that before.
Oh, and one quick one before we go. Halloween 2, where Michael Myers jumps up and stabs the neighbor girl. How did she not see him crouching on the floor? Where did he come from? He just kind of, it's like he didn't jump out from behind a couch or something. He just popped out of nowhere and just stabbed her. So it's just kind of but again, that was a last-minute addition because they thought that there wasn't enough bloodshed.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of an interesting. I'm glad that you kind of wrapped the show with that because that's something that horror movies, especially slashers, have always kind of cheated, and that's the whole point of view where if obviously we don't see it because that's where the camera is, but if the character were actually there and the killer were actually there, they would see them immediately, and that's something that has kind of always been cheated in the genre, and something that I kind of like that, where it's oh, come on, that person was right there, you would have seen that.
Yeah, or you have the ones Ice, where the killer's hiding inside a snowman and bursts out to jump someone, or when they're hiding underneath the pool water or something and they jump, how long were they just waiting there? How did they just know? Okay, somebody's going to come along. I'm just going to chill here underwater. No breathing apparatus. I'm good.
Yes, and with the canoe in the burning. How long was he just sitting there, and how did he know that it was even them?
Yeah. So it's very much, and that's part of the reason I love the genre, is because there's stuff like this where you can playfully make fun of it, but you still will keep going back to it because it owns my heart.
I completely agree with you. So that's a perfect way to end the show. Let us know if we've missed any